as an educational researcher, I would really like to know exactly what is being learned during this virtual learning, because I just don't know how much of this is being retained, how much of it's actually being learned, how much of it is really being engaging. Because there are some things, and I'm pretty far out from school. In a couple of years, we will be celebrating our 40th high school reunion. That's a long ways from high school. And there's some stuff that I don't remember at all ever learning in high school. But the majority of it, whenever I see online or I see on the TV or I hear kids say, they never taught us that, I'm always like, yeah, they did. I learned that.
Welcome, world, to another episode of Nobody's a Nobody podcast with me, Mike McVeigh. This is the podcast where I interview people I find absolutely fascinating, and I believe you will too. This week's episode is featuring Mary Sunshine herself, Jennifer Birch, and we're featuring Hot Dog Song of the Week, which is Punishment Map by Black Magnet. All right, it's the end of the year. Things are due, getting ready for 2021, but one thing that we want to focus on is making sure not to forget the nonprofits and the organizations that help the world become a better place. Obviously, I'm a big supporter of Our Neighborhood Empowered, but that's oneokc.org, but you can support the JED Foundation, Alzheimer's, YWCA, churches, places that, the Salvation Army. There's so many different organizations, but whatever you choose, this is a great time to help them meet their end of the year budgets. And whatever is important to you, please support the organizations and the nonprofits that go in that direction. My shout out business of the week is goosengiggles.com. That's GOOSENGIGGLES.com. This is a website run by my friend Steve Self. He is a photographer, and I know there's many types of photographers out there, but one of the things that he specializes in is astrophotography. He takes wonderful pictures of the sky. In fact, you can go onto his Instagram, Clickmaker, CLCKMKR, and has beautiful, beautiful things, and he will sell prints. He also specializes in headshots and family photos. So if you're looking at just getting a headshot family photo, or you want to get a brilliant picture of the sky, please check out goosengiggles.com with my friend Steve Self. Another shout out business that's not really local, but it's ADHDDD.com. It's ADHD comics, it's mental health illustrations, and even though the focus is on ADHD, I believe that Danny Donovan, the creator of this website and these wonderful comics, it's helpful for multiple uses. So please check out ADHDDD.com. Our guest this week is Mary Sunshine herself, Jennifer Birch, and as always, I find her fascinating. That's why I'm interviewing her. And even though she has some very interesting opinions that I might not always agree with, I think it's good to hear things that are different. Jennifer Birch has been an educator for most of her life, and she is now retired. And she has a lot of wonderful things to say about VOTEC, about education within COVID, and even talks a little bit of politics and how that affects educators in particular. So let's check out Jennifer Birch. Let's just start with the obvious. How'd you get the nickname Mary Sunshine?
I have the tendency to always look at the bright side or see the good in people. And I never realized how bad it was until someone that I work with was complaining about another coworker. She had brought a book the first week of her job. And this person was saying, can you believe someone would bring a book to work the first week of their job? And my response was, maybe she brought it to read at lunch. Oh my gosh, I am Mary Sunshine. That was exactly what came out of my mouth at that time.
I guess for me that would be the obvious reason why anybody brings a book. So I don't,
right.
Like Michael Sunshine.
Right. I just don't see nefarious motives in most people, except for some politicians.
I was going to say, to be fair, you've never been a government employee, so you might not really.
This is true. I've never been a government employee. And in our current environment, my cynicism has grown.
Now, when did you first get called Mary Sunshine?
Probably about 12 years ago when I was at the job that I retired from. And I just always had a positive outlook. And my coworkers just started calling me Mary Sunshine. And they were not saying it in a nice way.
There's a negative way to say it?
They felt like I was a little naive and I was opening myself up for heartache by being that way.
How accurate were they?
Maybe 40%, because I did get disappointed by a couple of people.
Speaking of your job, you worked for Eastern Oklahoma Technology Center. How long did you work there?
I worked there for 13 years.
And what did you do before that?
Before that, I taught family and consumer science, or what you and I know as home ec, for 10 years.
All right, we're going to just have to start from the beginning. Tell me who you are and everything about you, and I'll just sit back and listen. And yes, I have all day, so don't worry.
I do love talking about myself, so that's good. And my name is Jennifer Birch. Jennifer Mary Sunshine Birch. Jennifer Mary Sunshine Wallace Birch. I graduated from OSU. I'm a proud alumnus, and that's where I met my husband. We were introduced by a mutual friend, and we have been married for 35 years with 3 children that are now 33, 28, and almost 24. I have to think how old DJ is. And none of them live at home anymore. So we are empty nesters. And we retired this year, both of us. My husband taught school for 35 years. And I worked a variety of jobs over that time. But a large number of them were with school districts doing various things. And we have been quarantined together and retired together now since about March. And we still like each other most of the time.
The fact that you guys have been married for 41 years, is that what you said?
35.
35 years. The fact that you've been married for 35 years, what is the secret to a long-lasting marriage?
Get your own blanket. Have your own comforter on the bed, and then you never fight over covers. When you need to meet in the middle, you can. He's whispering that he's always right, and that is not correct, but I love him anyway.
I have to agree about the blankets. Brenda and I found that out within the first few months of our marriage, and we've had our own blanket ever since and have less fights.
Yes. When we got married, we ended up with 2 sets of the same comforter set. And so we just used them. We just used the comforters as blankets. And that's been my go-to advice for every newlywed I've ever been asked to give advice to, is get your own blanket. And then we laugh an awful lot at this house. If you can't laugh together, you aren't going to be happy.
So how did you plan on going into education when you were in college, or was that something that kind of happened by accident?
No, it was accidental completely and totally. My mother was a teacher. She taught for 38 or 40 years before she retired. And I was not going to marry a teacher. I was not going to be a teacher. I had planned to be a dietitian, thinking I might go into the military, because at least while I was being an intern dietitian, people would have to salute me. And then I met Royce, and that changed. So I became a food service director right out of college, married Royce, but when I had a year left of college to complete. And then I finished that and worked in food service. Then I moved to school food service. And then I moved to a small school, Hera, and was the food service director there. And the superintendent didn't know how to pay me. He was like trying to figure out what class I fit in, because I wasn't a teacher. I didn't have a teaching certificate, but I also wasn't like an hourly employee because I had a college degree and I was directing the 5 kitchens that we had. So he goes, why don't you go and get an alternative teaching certificate? And then I can pay you like a teacher. So I did that and went into the classroom to do some teaching and fell in love with it. And then the opportunity came for me to move to Choctaw and teach. And that was where I was supposed to be. Even though I avoided it for probably about 20 years, I ended up there and feel like I am truly a teacher at heart. That's all I have to say about that, Mike.
So for Choctaw, did you also teach home ec, or did you teach something else at Choctaw?
That's what I taught. I taught
Okay.
Family and consumer science. The around the 90s, someone, that big imaginary they that runs everything, decided that home ec was no longer politically correct, and they wanted to change the name to Family and Consumer Science.
Yeah,
So,
at my high school, because I graduated in '97. They split home ec up into two different courses. I'm guessing what you call it, the family science one was one, and the other one was independent living. And I took independent living, so I learned how
and
to write QuickBooks.
it all falls under the same umbrella. You can take general coursework, and you kind of cover all of them. There's housing and design, there's child development and family relations, there's food and nutrition, then there's clothing and textiles, and then there's consumer science, which is basically managing your money and getting your best deal. So there's like 5 general categories, and those can all be divided up into individual courses, or they can be one comprehensive course. I taught at a junior high, so I taught 8th and 9th graders, and I taught it all comprehensive course. So we did everything.
Okay. When you went to EOC, Eastern Oklahoma Technology Center, or yeah, close enough. When you went to EOC, did you also teach there,
Yes.
or were you only administrated?
I also taught. I moved to EOC to teach a new program, to be the first teacher of a program that they'd had for a couple of years. But the program was called Explore, or Sophomore Explore, and it allowed sophomore students to just take 1 hour, come over to the tech center for 1 hour of their day and kind of just try on the tech center. So it was more of a career exploration class, and they could come over, and we did a lot of self-analysis and self-reflection and career exploration, how to be that you're happiest if you do what you like, and you're better at work if you do what you like, and then allow them to choose several of our programs that we offered, and they could go in and actually kind of try on being a student. And I taught that for 4 years. And then I did some administrative work. And then I taught that course again for a year. And then I closed out my career being the administrator of the coordinator of the academic center, where they did testing and remediation and preparing for certification tests, that kind of work.
Okay, and I know we've talked about this some before, but remind me, and also all of our wonderful tens of listeners, what this difference about working for a technology center as opposed to like Choctaw High School. What is it for high school students, college students, or in between?
Okay. In Oklahoma, we have what are called shared time technology centers, and they are separate school districts that are funded separately from regular school districts. And for high school students, they are allowed to attend their districts, whatever district they have partnered with, shared time technology center, as a junior and senior for free. Adults pay tuition, but the tuition is usually far, far less than any community college or other trade school. Eastern Oklahoma County Technology Center is a fairly small technology center, and they only have 4 partner schools. So they encompass the school districts of Choctaw, Harrah, Luther, and Jones. And those 4 schools allow students to come and enroll. And our tech center is majorly, the majority of our students are high school students. Only about 20% are adults. Other tech centers are flipped, where they may be 80% are adult tuition paying students and only 20% are high school students.
And when you say high school students, are we talking about all 4 years, freshman through senior, or is it junior, senior? How does that look?
It's only junior, senior students, junior and senior students, and they can come either as juniors or as seniors and take a 1-year program. They can come both years, or they can start their senior year, and if they're in a 2-year program, they can come back for their what we call a 13th year. And usually tech centers offer a scholarship or a fee waiver program for those students to come in. EOC offers any student that graduates from their full 4 partner schools that graduates from high school to come to the tech center at no charge for for their 13th year. Even if they've never come as a high school student, they're eligible to do that. And most tech centers do have some sort of college scholarship or fee waiver program like that. We require students to apply just like it's a scholarship. And then they have to pay a small administrative fee of like $50 a semester, but then they're eligible to come at no cost.
Now, I live closer to Tuttle. I'm in Southwest Oklahoma City, and driving all the way out to Choctaw, it's sometimes a burden. But if my job happened to be in Choctaw, would I still be eligible to go to like EOC or to one of the technology centers at a different area, or do you have to live in the same area?
You do not have to live in the area that you go as an adult paying student. You're welcome to go wherever if they have a program for you. Often they have adult education, what they call career development or career enhancement coursework at most of our local tech centers in the state are offered at night. And they're usually for those people that live in that community. But if you wanted to go to a specialized one, I don't think anyone would, as long as they had room for you as a student, I don't think anyone would ever tell you no.
Okay. Now, are all technology centers, are they pretty similar? I mean, they might offer different classes, but they're pretty much set up the same.
They are. In Oklahoma, we're pretty much all set up that way. There are 29 districts for technology centers. Some districts only serve one school district, like Oklahoma City, only Metro Tech in Oklahoma City only serves Oklahoma City, and then I think they pick up Millwood. Gordon Cooper out here in Shawnee, where I live, they have like 29 school districts crossing over 3 or 4 counties that they work with. Francis Tuttle works with Putnam City and Edmond, and maybe Bethany and War Acres. I'm not 100%
Deer
sure.
Creek also, don't they?
And Deer Creek, yes. So it just depends on where. Middale is the only tech center that it's not a separate tech center district. They're part of Middale Public Schools. They're the only one that's kind of a little bit of an outlier over there. So they only serve Middale schools. The ones in Norman do Norman and Moore. You go further south from Norman and you're looking at Noble and Little Axe. They go all the way down to Mid-America, which is in Wayne. But if there's a program that is not offered at your tech center that you're eligible to go to, and you want to go to another tech center, usually administrators and counselors can make that work, but you have to provide your own transportation. For instance, we have a firefighting program at Fire Academy that very few of the city area schools have. And so we have a lot of students that come in from other school districts for that.
Okay. Now, I promise I wasn't necessarily thinking we were going to be talking about tech centers and stuff, but I do find it kind of interesting. I wonder if I should have done that when I first got out of high school.
I felt that way too. When I was in college at OSU, we went out. You have to take a class. When I was in college, you had to take a class in each one of the program areas that I told you about earlier in home ec. And one was adult education. And in our adult education class, we went out and took a tour of Mid-America Technology Center. Not Mid-America. I'm sorry, it's Indian Meridian. It was Indian Meridian Technology Center. Now it's just Meridian Technology Center. And we took a tour of that, and we were all like, how come no one told us about this? But I graduated in the 80s. You graduated in the 90s. We still fight the battle with the tech centers today that it's a separate track, that you either are going college bound or you're going to the tech center, and never the twain shall meet. And it's not that way anymore.
Yeah, I think my high school, there's a lot of guys that went out and ladies that went out to Francis Tuttle. But they didn't really explain it very well. Like we knew it was there, but we just thought it was a way to basically, either get paid to go to school. Cause
right.
they pay you like a very minimum wage or some kind of salary, or it was a way to kind of cut classes or something.
Yeah. And it's just, I don't think we did a very good job of explaining it. I think back when you and I were in high school or even in junior high, we were placed on a track of either we're going to college or we're not. And if we were on the track of not going to college, we were encouraged to go out to the tech center to learn a trade, because technically that's what the tech centers used to be. They were vocational centers, and you went there to learn a skill and a trade. And then you went right out of high school into that trade and you worked doing that. And now today, people that are learning those skills often are making more money than you and I are.
Oh,
of course,
yeah.
We were both government employees, so it's easier to do, but it's not that way anymore. Students come to the tech center as part of their plans for college. I read an article, probably 15 years ago once. I think it was either in a women's magazine or in Reader's Digest, about how parents don't owe their children a college education. Parents owe their children a way to pay for that college education. And if they send them to a tech center to become a welder or a hairdresser or a stylist or a carpenter, they can then work their way through college much easier than I tried to work my way through college flipping burgers.
Yeah, and you're also more likely to get a job that will, or at least this is what I've read. You'll know this much better than me, but I've been told that if you go in for like AC or electricity or whatever, once you graduate, you get to have kind of like a paid internship, or while you're still going through college, the school, while you're still going through the school, you'll have either an internship or a paid internship, and you can actually get the ropes, and just within a few years, you can pay off the college the college tuition I still need to pay off for the next 30 years.
Yes, that is true. I know of one student in particular that learned to weld, and he graduated with a master's degree in psychology without any college debt, working 2 days a week as a welder. I know other students who've gone into the healthcare field, and they start out from the tech center with a CNA, certified nursing assistant, and then they go to work for a hospital, and the hospital pays the rest of their education while they're working for that particular hospital. I know a student that went to work she went to automotive, and she went to work at one of the service companies at Midwest, one of the big dealers in Midwest City. And she started as a 19-year-old girl, making more money than my husband and I made together as teachers. So
yeah, just salt
they
that
paid for her
wound.
college education as well. Yes.
Now, I know of some of the things because I do look. In fact, I have on my nightstand right now the Moore Norman Technology Center, their most recent mailer, because that's where I live in an area. But what are the general categories that? I mean, I know like HVAC, electrician, welding, and I guess firefighter. Since you mentioned that, those are probably the four of the bigger ones. What are some of the other things that Votech offers?
At EOC, we have, I believe, about 14 programs, and we have HVAC, heating and air, electrical. We have automotive service technology. We just added, right before I retired, an automotive collision, which is the body work. We have welding. We have now we don't have construction trades anymore. We have graphic arts, which is where they learn about the car wrapping systems and all the printing and all of the creative side of the production and the creative side of graphic arts. We have early care and education, which is child care. We have computer repair. We have web page and game design. We have digital photography, and we have we have business and finance, business administration and finance, where they can either be an administrative assistant or they can go into the accounting side of things and be like a payroll clerk or something like that. Then we have a healthcare class that offers kind of a biomedical type background, and then a CNA certification. And then we have the firefighting class for our high school students. So that's all the programs that are offered out at EOC. And every tech center customizes, because the whole idea is for the tech centers to meet the needs of the area that they're in. So for instance, I know we have an extremely strong welding program and an extremely strong HVAC program. And those students, you got to be careful saying this, but they're practically guaranteed employment if they want it. They can go right into the workforce. And we've had visitors from other tech centers who've said, how do you get all your welders employed? And we're like, We just have the demand out here for welders.
Right.
Although our welders don't work necessarily in Choctaw. They work on the west side of Oklahoma City, where all of the industry is. Because Choctaw is a bedroom community. There's not a lot of industry out our way.
Now, I'm looking at just the cost of some of the community colleges in Oklahoma City, and they're about $4,000 a semester if you're an in-state student. What does the cost, let's saying you don't get scholarships or any grants or whatever, how much does it cost to do a semester or a year at EOC? Approximately. I know that the prices change constantly and everything.
Right. And again, it varies between tech centers. We are very on the low end of the cost. And I think we charge $1.50 a clock hour, which is around $1,000 a semester. I'm sorry. If you're a full-time all-day student, if you only go half-time, it's less. It's half that. It's going to be about around $1,000 a year.
That's crazy.
It's very inexpensive if you end up. It's definitely something you can afford. And we have a few, not very many at EOC. Other schools have way more than we do, but we have a few programs that are Pell eligible, so you can still apply for a Pell Grant and use that to pay your tuition.
And what's the average time frame to complete a program at EOC? Like, or what's the, if you're full time or half time?
Most of them are a year or 2 year programs. That's it. We are not a degree granting program, a degree granting institution. We can't grant college credit. We can't grant a degree, but we can allow you to earn a certification, and that's usually what is their end goal.
So you're really looking at probably between $1,000 and $2,000 total for the whole program.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, wow. That's
now our firefighting and our EMT programs for adults are a little bit more expensive because they are full-time, full day, highly intensive. You start, I think they're like 18 or 20 week programs, and you're going from 7 to 6 every day. And those are around $5,000 for one of those. But you walk out of there with a lot of certifications that make you immediately employable with the fire department.
And part of it, I know like several of the trades, at least the common trades, my body size, mostly because of height, it's not very manageable because electrician, HVAC, plumbing, those kinds of things, being tall is an inconvenience.
Right.
And I know you mentioned a few. What are, not necessarily at EOC, what are some of the other programs that, if you're maybe not a short person, that tall people could get into? Because there's a few of us, enough of us out there.
Well, there's a lot of really cool programs. Not Metro Tech. I keep getting Francis Tuttle. I know they have an prosthetics program where you can go and learn how to do prosthetics. Yeah. Now it's an adult only program, and it's like 16 months. It's a weird number and you have to commit to it, but it's really, really cool. They also have
when you're saying adult only, I just want to clarify, that means that you're 18.
Yeah, you have to be out of high school.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You have to be an adult to get into some of these programs. I know Francis Tuttle also has what's called a motor control program or advanced manufacturing, which is where they're learning how to run the machines that run the manufacturing lines. We have our students in electrical trades are exposed to motor controls, but we don't have an entire program. Canadian Valley has a wind energy program where you learn how to do the big giant wind turbines, and you learn how to repair and install and troubleshoot and all that stuff. So everyone kind of meets their own local needs.
Okay. And we'll move away from VOTEC and stuff, though I find this really interesting. We've not really talked about it very much, even in the past.
Part of my job was to recruit students and adults into the tech center, and I was pretty darn good at it.
That does not surprise me at all. I have to say, though, that I really wish I would have understood what those options were coming out of high school, and even after I flunked out of college, and even after I graduated college.
I think as a whole, the tech centers in Oklahoma do a much better job than they used to do about making sure everyone understands what their options are, there's always more we can do. And there's always that perception that it's for, if you're going to go to college, you can't go to the tech center, or you only go to the tech center if you can't cut it somewhere else. And that's not the case. And we fight that battle constantly.
Well, it sounds like a really good alternative for someone that doesn't want to necessarily go into the military, but wants to be able to still get some structure and
And there is a place.
Well, no.
Yeah, there's a place for students who don't want to go into the military, who don't want to go and get a lot of college debt, or just don't feel like their college, they don't want to. When you graduate from high school after 12 years, you may not want to study anymore. I would never feel that way, but I'm not a normal person. I love to learn.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you.
And not every student is like that.
I wouldn't mind making money either, though. And maybe once I make money, I'll realize how much I don't want money. But until then, all right. So let's transition a little bit. As many of my guests, this has been true. This is true with you as well. I met you in Toastmasters, and we met. You're one. I'm a really horrible person, and I know this about myself. Generally, and I found this out actually with someone I was talking to earlier this morning, that I have this competitive streak, and I'm sure it's about being an only child. When we were kind of middle class, living in a upper or lower upper class or an upper middle class high school and community. So I always felt like it was cutthroat kind of stuff. And no matter who I see, I'm always competing with them in my mind. And it really takes a long time for me to pull back and not be competitive with them. And I don't know if that's all, if anybody, maybe save for my wife. And even then, if we're doing a game or something, I'm sure I'm back into competitive mode. But so the first time I saw you, you were competing in the humorous speech and evaluation contest. And I was already sizing you up like, man, I can beat her. And I know you're like, what? But that's legitimately, and I don't know if I like having this revelation about myself now at this point in my life, but it does make sense for how I approach things as a whole. But I'm not going to necessarily ask all of the same questions, but what got you started in Toastmasters, and did you find any benefit being in Toastmasters?
I love to talk, and I love to talk to people, and I love to talk to groups. Who'd have thunk, getting to know me. And so I'd always wanted to join Toastmasters, but there was never one that was convenient. There wasn't anything close to where I lived. There wasn't anything close to where I worked. And someone at the tech center said, I want to start a Toastmasters club. Do you want to help? And so I jumped right on that like a duck on a June bug. And that's how I got started into Toastmasters. And I enjoyed the competition. I competed for a while, and then I went into leadership. And I really got into leadership. And then I got some health issues and had some time issues. And so I'm not involved in Toastmasters anymore, but I did enjoy it. And I'm sure that if we ever get a Toastmasters club out in Shawnee, that I don't have to start, that I can just attend as a member, I would probably do that. When Royce and I were first married, before we had children, he coached 4 or 5 football teams that first year we were married. A lot of football. And we only had Wednesday nights off because that's church night in Oklahoma.
Right.
And so we would go into Edmond. We lived in Wellston, and we would go at Garfield's. And you remember Garfield's had paper and crayons at the tables, and he would draw football plays for me so that I would understand what's going on that Friday night at the football games.
So now you know what a 26 counter is.
Right. So I know what they're going to do when they line up. When they would line up in a certain way, I would know what they were going to do.
That's funny. All right. So if my memory serves, one of the things that you have as a hobby had as a hobby is you collected books from people, and specifically signed books. And how did that hobby get started?
I went with a group of students to a Sequoia. Is that what I think to a book meeting, I drove the bus, and an English teacher took a group of students to see an author of a book that was going to win or was in the running for an award. And so I read the book with the students because I love to read. I drove the students. I sat in the meeting and heard her give her speech. I was truly moved and touched by the book. I had a daughter that was right about the age of the subject matter of the book. So I bought the book and I got the author to sign it. And she signed it to Haley's mom. And I was so excited about it. So I have that book. Actually, I think Haley's in possession of that book right now. But anytime I had the opportunity to meet an author, I would get them to sign their book after that. And I have an uncle that has written a history book, and I have his history book, and I've read it. I have a cousin, a niece that has illustrated a teacher education book, and I have that she has signed because she is the illustrator of the cover. So it's not a huge collection. It's only maybe 15 to 20 books. I don't go stalk authors, or I don't spend a lot of time on it. But anytime the opportunity is there, I'm going to take advantage of it. I've spent a lot of time at the Capitol because, again, through my education and my jobs, I sponsored groups. When I taught at Choctaw Junior High, I was the sponsor of our FCCLA club, which used to be FHA. Of course, that was through my class. Then I sponsored the student council, and I was the academic bowl coach there. And then I spent 1 year coaching volleyball, which just was the topic of a humorous speech, and that still makes me shudder to this day. And because I am the least athletic person on the face of the planet. Then when I was at EOC, I helped with the National Technical Honor Society, and I helped with the leadership teams, and I helped with some other teams. So I took students to the Capitol with National Technical Honor Society, and we did active lobbying as student groups for our tech programs with our legislators. And so I've been there a lot, and am not a familiar face to them, but I know how to play the game. So I do know how to get their attention, at least.
Legally speaking, correct?
Yes. And I'm pretty good about park. And I've only ever had one representative be rude to me. And he was so rude to me, my students were shocked. But most of the rest of them listened very carefully, and they're very polite. And some of them I might have even been able to persuade. One, I know I'll never persuade him to vote differently. And he's now not. He was my representative, and I took him to lunch. I called him right after he was elected and said, I would like to meet with you and have lunch. But then he ended up paying for lunch because he said he couldn't have me pay for lunch for some reason. But my son and I went to lunch with our representative, and then now he's a senator for a district that doesn't include me.
And I'm sure he doesn't take any lobbyist money whatsoever.
I'm sure he doesn't.
Only to Biden is the only one who's had more.
Right.
And I think a lot of those votes were fake votes.
Well, and I think that the reason, and I will say the same thing. I'm a very left-leaning person. You would never know that, would you? I think that the Republicans have spent a great deal of time and effort suppressing the vote of just anyone, particularly Democrats and particularly people of color. I would say the same thing I used to say about the Southern Baptists when they would have abortion Sunday, which is a thing.
The Sunday for everybody to get abortions?
No, that's where it's the Sunday to preach against abortions and to get everybody all riled up. And I think if I said in a Sunday school class once, and almost got myself kicked out, that if we spent half the time we spent fighting abortion, teaching our children to be responsible, there wouldn't be a need for those abortions. If we would spend half the time educating people about civics, there wouldn't be any need for voter suppression.
I'm good with moderate Democrats, and I'm good with moderate Republicans. I'm not necessarily good with extremes, but now everything seems extreme.
Right. And I think the Democrats that we have in the state house are, even though they're in the majority, are very moderate and very, I expect a lot out of them. Forrest Bennett, Mickey Dolenz, Emily Virgin. Those are some fantastic people.
Yeah.
And they've got good heads on their shoulders. And I think when we, I think that when we have the budget issues that we've had, and we're going to have again this year, we should let those guys give it a shot. We should let that younger, newer group give it a shot and see what they can come up with.
Are you glad that you're not teaching with all the COVID stuff going on?
Yes. Even though I didn't have a lot of face-to-face student contact in what I was doing right before I retired, I'm really glad that I'm not teaching. And I really feel for those teachers that are still in the classroom. They have been placed into a tough situation. And speaking of which, I will get on my soapbox about that. I plan, since I'm still working on my doctorate, I have changed my focus of research from what I was going to do, which was women in leadership, to this COVID situation, because there's very, very little research. And what I'm going to try to explain what our teachers are facing on a daily basis at the secondary level to you right now. They have split the student body in half. Then they gave everybody the option to go to total virtual. You can choose to enroll in a virtual school and not go to school at all. Everybody else is split in half. And half of the student body shows up on Monday and Tuesday and has virtual instruction from that classroom teacher Wednesday through Friday. The other half of the student body has virtual instruction from that classroom teacher Monday through Wednesday and goes to class to get face-to-face instruction on Thursday and Friday. Those same teachers are teaching the virtual students as well. Some of them, not all. Some have been pulled out to do only virtual, but there's a lot that are doing. So we have a colleague that is teaching in three modes. She has approximately 14 students that come on Monday and Tuesday. She has approximately 18 students that come on Thursday and Friday. And then she has one virtual class that's 38 students in it. I cannot wrap my mind around how to teach that way.
And on top of that, she's only getting paid to teach, basically for teaching one class, even because it's probably what her contract shows at the beginning of the year.
Right. So she's probably teaching more students per day than she's ever taught before. And she's trying to teach those students in three different modes or three different tracks.
Yeah.
And trying to keep them. And then she has three classes a day, because they have the block schedule at this particular school. And so she's got 3 classes a day. And I just don't see how they're doing it. A fellow Toastmaster friend of ours whose wife teaches at that same high school, she teaches math. He told me that his wife is spending hours and hours and hours. Like it's taking her between 10 to 15 hours to create an hour of content for her students, because she's not depending upon any canned curriculum. She's creating it all herself. Another teacher says what he's doing is he's videotaping or recording his lessons on Monday and Tuesday, and then the B group is supposed to check in and watch those lessons. They can either watch them live as they're occurring, or they can watch them, but they're supposed to have them watched by the time they show up on Thursday and Friday. And then the same thing on Thursday and Friday for that Monday, Tuesday group, they have to check in and watch. What we're finding is that that's not happening. That's not happening for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons that's not happening, that students aren't checking in or doing their virtual work or following the class, one is access. There's still a large majority of students in this state and nationwide that do not have reliable access to the internet, to Wi-Fi within their homes, to a device that they can use. The other reason is simply these are adolescents. There's often no parent home. And if the parent is home, the parent is disgruntled because they've either been laid off or they've been forced to stay at home to watch the children. So they're there's those money worries. There's that I'm losing any opportunities I might have, which is hitting women harder than men. Someone made the comment that women's careers, or the women in the workforce, has been pushed back 40 years in the last 6 months. So these teachers are having to do just work miracles, and they can't because they're human. And what's going to happen then? We've heard, oh, everybody's going to go back face to face. And of course, Governor Stitt wants the entire state in the classroom in January, the entire state. Well, they've scheduled these classes. What's this teacher going to do when 38 virtual kids the majority of them have done little to no work, show back up in her class? How's she going to deal with that? One, she's going to have 38 in a science lab that was built for 24. And two, over half of them are going to have deficit because they haven't really learned anything, because there's no engagement. And if I were running the world, if I were Queen Jennifer and everybody had to listen to me, I would say nationwide, this is going to be a gap year. We can do it if we all do it together and we just kind of reset. The government's going to have to step in and support the schools and the colleges that are going to have to deal with this gap year, because fortunately, those teachers still deserve to get paid. But let's use this year or the rest of this year to find our passion, to figure out what we really want to learn. If we have to send students to school, let's send them to school in the small groups like that. Who wants to learn this? But it's time to just simply say, learning isn't happening there's not a lot of real learning going on. Only in the most ideal situations is real learning going on. And I have 2 children in the public schools. One is doing virtual and one was doing face-to-face until her school got shut down because of COVID. And so those grandchildren, there's not a lot of learning going on. And I know these are crucial years and this is important, but the public is looking at the school systems as babysitting. And if they're going to expect us to babysit, then that's what we need to do. Just babysit. And let's maybe try to go a different direction.
And let's pay the teachers babysitting money instead of teachers' money.
Exactly, so because then they'll be raking it in.
Hot dog. Hot dog. Hot dog.
Hey listeners, it's Jarvix again with my hot dog song of the week. I'm continually grateful to Mike here for letting me have a lot of free reign on what music I share in my segment. This time, I'm going to indulge a little bit again and pull from that edgier side of the music scene here in Oklahoma City. The song I'm sharing is Punishment Map by Black Magnet, an industrial solo project turned industrial band that knows how to get tastefully brutal with its furious arrangements, cavernous vocals, and heavy synths and guitars. If the term industrial music doesn't ring a bell for you, you might at least be familiar with legendary industrial artist Nine Inch Nails, which is where that song Hurt, famously covered by Johnny Cash, comes from. I wouldn't say that Black Magnet has sounded much like Nine Inch Nails since its 2018 self-titled EP, but perhaps it gives you some idea. Industrial music is typically heavy, cold, relentless, and perhaps disturbing. Just an aside here, it might lead one to think that the individuals responsible for such music are all of those qualities as well, but oftentimes I find that people who are into stuff like this, industrial, metal, noise, are just as likely to be nice and friendly as folk singer-songwriters. Black Magnet has been getting a lot of love outside of the state this year, significantly more than it has ever gotten here at home, which is sadly the norm. The project recently put out its first full-length album, Hallucination Scene, on a metal label called 20 Bucks Spin, which has put it in front of dozens of music blogs that have written glowingly about it. One review from Brutal Resonance called it a must-buy, calling the music, quote, brutal, punchy, and synthetically infectious. Now, I'll be honest about the song I'm featuring. I'm not sure I'm making out all of the lyrics. They're quite distorted and blurred, but they seem to fit right in with the rest of the album's existential angst and utter fury. I understand industrial is not everyone's cup of tea, but if you can appreciate the heavy sounds, I think Black Magnet is one of the best ones out there doing it right now. The new album, Hallucination Scene, can be purchased digitally at blackmagnet.bandcamp.com. That's Black Magnet without any vowels, BLCKMGNT.bandcamp.com. It's also available on vinyl, which you can pick up at 20bucksspin.com. And just a quick shameless plug, I'm currently selling the Black Magnet debut EP on cassette in Make Oklahoma Weirder's curated local tape case, exclusively at Dig It, a vintage boutique and punk-flavored art space in the Plaza District. But I digress. Here is Punishment Map by Black Magnet.
Well, thank you to Mary Sunshine, Jennifer Birch. Thank you, Black Magnet, Jarvix, for bringing different but local music every time. Please support Steve Self, support ADHDD.com, one.okc.org, or any other organization. If you find this podcast useful, if you find it something that's worth sharing, please share it. Don't just wait. Share it. I have a lot of love for so many people, and it's so important for you, the one who's listening to this right now, to know that nobody is a nobody, and that means you. Until next time.